The courtroom went silent when I walked through those oak doors. My son Marcus actually smirked a cold, confident curl of his lip that said he'd already won. My daughter-in-law Vanessa kept her eyes on her legal pad, but I caught the satisfied twitch at the corner of her mouth. They thought they were looking at a confused old woman who'd lose everything today. Then Judge Harrison looked up from his paperwork. His face went white. The pen in his hand clattered onto the bench. "Margaret Chen?" His voice cracked. "Agent Chen? The ghost?" Every head in that courtroom turned. Marcus's smirk vanished. Vanessa's pen froze mid-stroke. Even their lawyer, some slick-haired kid in an expensive suit, looked confused. Nobody knew who I really was. They'd forgotten. Or maybe they never bothered to ask. Let me back up. I need to tell you how I ended up here, sitting across from my own son while he tried to have me declared mentally incompetent. It's a long story, but you'll understand why I did what I did. My name is Margaret Chen, and for 30 years I was one of the FBI's most decorated criminal profilers. They called me the Ghost because I could slip into a suspect's mind, predict their next move, and disappear before they knew I was there. I tracked serial killers, white-collar criminals, organized crime bosses. I'd interviewed monsters who'd look you dead in the eye and lie without a single tell. I'd caught people who thought they were too smart to get caught. I retired 5 years ago at 63. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. My husband James had been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's at 59. Watching him disappear piece by piece, that was harder than any case I'd ever worked. He'd forget my name, forget where he was, forget that we'd been married for 35 years. Some days he'd recognize me for just a moment, and I'd see the man I loved trapped inside a mind that was betraying him. I took early retirement to care for him. The Bureau wanted me to stay, said I could work reduced hours, but I couldn't do that to James. He'd supported my career through late nights, missed birthdays, and weeks away on cases. It was my turn to be there for him. We'd lived in Seattle for 20 years in a beautiful Victorian house in Capitol Hill. James had restored it himself. When we first bought it, stripped the wallpaper, refinished the floors, replaced every window. He'd loved that house. Even when he couldn't remember my name, he'd run his hands along the crown molding and smile. Our son Marcus lived in the same city, just across town in a modern condo in Belltown. He was 42, worked in tech, made good money. We'd never been particularly close. My job had seen to that, but I'd always thought we had an understanding. He was busy with his own life. I was busy with mine. When James got sick, Marcus visited maybe once a month. Always rushed, always checking his phone, always with somewhere else to be. Then he married Vanessa 3 years ago. Vanessa was 37, a lawyer at a mid-sized firm downtown, beautiful in that polished, calculated way. Perfect hair, perfect nails, perfect smile that never quite reached her eyes. I ran a background check on her the week after Marcus introduced us. Old habits. I found nothing alarming then. Just a moderately successful career and a taste for expensive things she couldn't quite afford on her salary. James died 18 months ago. Pneumonia, finally, after the Alzheimer's had stripped away everything that made him James. I held his hand in that hospital room and felt something inside me crack. Not break, I'd seen too much in my career to break completely, but crack, deep enough that I knew I'd never be quite whole again. Marcus came to the funeral, of course. Vanessa came too, wearing black Prada and checking her phone during the service. My granddaughter Emily was 13 then, quiet and awkward, and she sat next to me through the whole thing. She held my hand when I couldn't speak during the eulogy. After James died, I felt untethered. The house felt too big, too empty, too full of memories. I started spending more time with Emily. She'd come over after school, and we'd bake cookies or I'd help her with homework. She reminded me so much of myself at that age. Smart, observant, uncomfortable in her own skin. Marcus and Vanessa started visiting more often after the funeral. At first I thought they were being supportive, but their visits had a pattern. They'd walk through the house, comment on how I was keeping up with things, suggest that maybe the house was too much for me to handle alone. Vanessa would run her finger along the mantelpiece, checking for dust. Marcus would ask if I was managing okay financially. Then came the concerned phone calls. Was I eating enough? Was I remembering to take my vitamins? Had I been to the doctor lately? The questions felt wrong, too practiced, like they were building a file. 6 months after James died, they took me to lunch at this upscale restaurant in downtown Seattle. Vanessa ordered for me some salad I didn't want, and then they presented their proposal. They wanted me to sell the house, move into a nice assisted living facility. They'd help me manage my finances so I wouldn't have to worry about all those complicated decisions. I smiled and thanked them for their concern, told them I was fine. The house was paid off, my pension was solid, and I wasn't ready to give up my independence. Vanessa's perfect smile tightened. Marcus looked disappointed. They dropped it, but I knew it wasn't over. I'd seen this before in my work, people who wanted something they weren't entitled to, testing boundaries, probing for weaknesses. I started paying attention, really paying attention, the way I used to on cases. Marcus began bringing up my forgetfulness. Did I remember our lunch next Tuesday? Had I forgotten to call him back yesterday? I kept detailed notes and checked them obsessively. I hadn't forgotten anything. He was manufacturing events that never happened, then acting concerned when I couldn't confirm them. Vanessa would visit and rearrange things in my house. Just tidying up a bit, Margaret, she'd say. Then Marcus would come by and express worry about my disorganization. I started taking photos of every room before they visited. Emily noticed something was wrong. She was 15 now, and sharp in a way that reminded me of myself at that age. She'd watch her parents with narrow eyes during their visits, and after they left, she'd ask me quiet questions. "Grandma, are you really forgetting things?" I told her I wasn't. She believed me. The petition came 8 months ago. Marcus and Vanessa filed for guardianship, claiming I was mentally incompetent. They had evidence photos of my supposedly disorganized house, statements from Marcus about my memory problems, a note from a doctor I'd never seen claiming I'd missed appointments. A social worker came to evaluate me, a nice woman in her 30s named Jennifer, who asked me careful questions and looked around my house with worried eyes. I could see what she was seeing: a woman living alone in a big house, a widow still grieving, someone who might need help. I played it just confused enough to be believable, not so far gone that she'd recommend immediate intervention, but enough that she'd mark concerns on her evaluation form. Jennifer recommended follow-up visits and suggested I might benefit from additional support. Because here's what I'd figured out by then: Vanessa was stealing from her clients. It started with small things I noticed during their visits. Vanessa would take phone calls in my kitchen, thinking I wasn't listening. Legal jargon, settlement amounts, trust accounts. But her tone was wrong, too anxious, too defensive. Then I overheard her arguing with Marcus one evening, when they thought I was napping upstairs. "We need that house money now," Vanessa had hissed. "The audit is in 3 months. If we don't..." Marcus had cut her off when he heard me on the stairs. I'd spent 30 years reading criminals. I knew exactly what I was hearing. That night, I dug out my old case files from the basement. Not the classified ones, those went back to the bureau, but my personal notes, my methodology, my contacts. I might be retired, but I still remembered how to investigate. I started with Vanessa's law firm, made some calls to old colleagues who owed me favors. Found out that Vanessa handled personal injury settlements, managing trust accounts for clients who'd received large payouts. Perfect opportunity for embezzlement if you were smart about it. Small amounts over time, from people who might not notice or might not be in a position to complain. I needed access to financial records. That meant I needed to give them a reason to think I wasn't a threat. So I became the confused old woman they wanted me to be. I started forgetting things during their visits. What day was it? Had they called me yesterday? I'd wander around looking for my reading glasses when they were on my head. I'd tell the same story twice in one conversation. I made myself into exactly what their petition claimed I was. Marcus seemed relieved. Vanessa looked satisfied. They stopped being careful around me. I wore long sleeves to hide the small recording device I'd borrowed from a former colleague. FBI-grade equipment, completely legal as long as I was part of the conversation. I recorded every visit, every phone call, every word they said in my house. Vanessa got careless. She'd take phone calls right in front of me, discussing transfer schedules and account adjustments with someone she called David. She assumed I was too confused to understand. She was wrong. I cross-referenced names from Vanessa's conversations with court records of personal injury settlements her firm had handled. Found 3 clients whose settlements she'd managed: a car accident victim, a medical malpractice case, and a workplace injury case. Total settlements, $3.2 million. All 3 clients had gotten their initial payments, then smaller monthly amounts from trust accounts Vanessa administered. I contacted all 3. Told them I was writing a book about the legal profession, doing research on trust account management. 2 of them were happy to share their experiences. The third was suspicious, but that was fine. I only needed 2 to establish a pattern. Both confirmed they'd received less money than they expected. Both said Vanessa had explained it as administrative fees and investment adjustments. Both had statements showing regular withdrawals from their trust accounts that they'd never authorized. I compiled everything: recordings, financial records, witness statements, email printouts I'd carefully gathered from Vanessa's laptop when she left it open on my kitchen table. I built a case file that would have made my old FBI team proud. Then came the moment that almost broke my resolve. It was a Wednesday morning, early. I was in my kitchen making coffee when my chest tightened. Not pain exactly, but wrong. Pressure, difficulty breathing. I'd read enough medical reports to know what a heart attack might feel like. I called Marcus. Tried to keep my voice steady. "Marcus, I need you to take me to the hospital. I think something's wrong with my heart." There was a pause. A long pause where I could hear him breathing on the other end. "Mom, I'm in a meeting. Can you call no Canticun Ardeg? I don't want to make a fuss. I just need—" "Mom, I really can't leave right now. Just call 911. That's what they're there for." The line went dead. He'd hung up on me. I sat there in my kitchen, phone in my shaking hand, and felt something I hadn't felt in all my years chasing criminals. True heartbreak. Not from a possible heart attack, it turned out to be severe anxiety, but from the realization that my son cared more about whatever meeting he was in than whether his mother was dying. I called Emily instead. She was at school, but she saw my text and called me right back. "Grandma? What's wrong?" I could barely speak. "I need help." "I'm coming. Stay there. I'm calling 911, and I'm coming." She did both. The paramedics arrived in 8 minutes. Emily got there in 12, having convinced her school to let her leave. She held my hand in the ambulance. She sat with me through the ER tests. She was there when they confirmed it wasn't a heart attack, just a panic attack, but I should follow up with my doctor. Marcus showed up 4 hours later. Vanessa came with him, looking annoyed at the inconvenience. "See, Mom?" Marcus said, like he was explaining something to a child. "This is why we're worried about you. These panic attacks, the confusion, you need more support than you're getting." Emily stared at her father with something like hatred. "She called you this morning, Dad. She asked for help and you hung up on her." "I was in an important meeting, Em. Your grandmother needs to learn to use emergency services appropriately. She thought she was having a heart attack. Which is why professionals should handle it, not family members who aren't trained." I watched him perform this logical gymnastics and saw him clearly for the first time in years. This wasn't the little boy I'd raised. This wasn't even the distant adult son I'd made peace with. This was a stranger who'd been coached by his wife on exactly how to frame my incompetence for maximum legal effect. Vanessa put her hand on Marcus's arm. "We're just concerned, Margaret. These incidents keep happening. Maybe it's time to seriously consider our proposal." I looked at her perfectly composed face and thought, "You have no idea what's coming." 2 weeks later, we were back in court for a competency hearing. Their lawyer presented their evidence: photos, medical reports, statements from Marcus about my declining condition. The social worker testified about her concerns. Even my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, had been convinced to testify that she'd seen me wandering around my yard in my nightgown at odd hours. I sat there in my sensible cardigan and slacks, playing the role of confused elderly woman. I fumbled with my water glass. I asked the judge to repeat questions. I looked appropriately overwhelmed by the proceedings. Their lawyer was confident. Marcus looked sympathetic but determined. Vanessa kept checking her phone. Then my lawyer stood up. I'd hired Frank Morrison, an old friend from my FBI days who'd retired and gone into private practice. Frank was 72, looked like someone's kindly grandfather, and had one of the sharpest legal minds I'd ever encountered. "Your Honor," Frank said quietly, "the defense would like to call a witness." "What witness?" their lawyer sputtered. "There was no witness on the disclosure list." "The defendant herself," Frank said. "Margaret Chen would like to testify." That's when Judge Harrison really looked at me. I saw the moment of recognition in his eyes. I'd testified in his courtroom twice, 15 years ago, when he was a district judge handling federal cases. I'd helped put away a trafficking ring that had operated through the Seattle ports. He'd called my testimony the most precise and devastating evidence presentation he'd ever witnessed. "Agent Chen," he said, and the courtroom erupted. Marcus's lawyer started objecting. Marcus looked confused. Vanessa went very still. I stood up, and it was like shedding a costume. The confused elderly woman disappeared. I straightened my shoulders, met the judge's eyes, and let him see exactly who I was. "Your Honor, I apologize for the deception, but I needed to ensure certain parties believed I was exactly what they claimed: incompetent, confused, easy to manipulate. They needed to feel safe enough to incriminate themselves." I turned to Marcus and Vanessa. "You see, while you were building your case about my supposed incompetence, I was building a case of my own, about embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse." Vanessa stood up. "This is ridiculous. Your Honor, she's clearly—" "Sit down, Miss Reeves," Judge Harrison said quietly. His tone could have frozen nitrogen. Frank handed me a folder. I opened it and pulled out the first document. "Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that Miss Vanessa Reeves has been systematically embezzling from client trust accounts at Harrison and Wade, LLP, where she works as an attorney. Over the past 2 years, she has stolen approximately $850,000 from 3 separate clients: Robert Martinez, whose medical malpractice settlement she managed, Susan Kowalski, a workplace injury victim, and David Park, a car accident victim." I placed bank statements on the evidence table. "These are the official trust account statements. These," I pulled out another set, "are the statements actually provided to the clients. Note the discrepancies in the monthly distributions." Vanessa had gone white. Their lawyer was flipping through papers frantically. "Miss Reeves needed money quickly because her firm is conducting an internal audit in approximately 6 weeks. She knew the embezzlement would be discovered. She needed a large influx of cash to cover the missing funds before the audit revealed her theft." I turned to Marcus, my son, my baby boy who I'd rocked to sleep and taught to ride a bike and loved more than my own life. My son Marcus knew about the embezzlement. He didn't actively participate, but he knew. And instead of stopping her, he agreed to help her gain access to my assets by having me declared incompetent. They planned to force the sale of my home and use the proceeds to cover Vanessa's theft. "That's not I didn't," Marcus stammered. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the courtroom's audio system. Frank had gotten the technical setup approved that morning. "I'm going to play several recordings now. These were all made in my home, during conversations I was party to. They're completely legal under Washington State's one-party consent law." The first recording played. Vanessa's voice crystal clear. "We need that house money now. The audit is in 3 months. If we don't cover those accounts before then, I'm looking at disbarment and prison time." Marcus's voice. "I know, but we need to do this carefully. If she fights the competency hearing, she won't. Look at her. She can barely remember what day it is." The courtroom was dead silent except for the recording. I played 3 more, each one more damning than the last. Vanessa discussing how to manipulate the social worker's evaluation. Marcus practicing how to testify about my supposed memory problems. Vanessa coaching Marcus on what to tell their lawyer. In the last recording, Vanessa said something that made even the court reporter stop typing. "Once we get control of her finances, we can move her into that memory care place. She won't even know what's happening, and if she dies in there before the money runs out, well, Emily gets everything anyway, and she's young enough to manipulate." Emily made a small sound from where she sat in the gallery. I couldn't look at her. If I looked at her, I'd break. "Your Honor," Frank said into the silence that followed, "we're requesting immediate dismissal of the competency petition. Additionally, we're requesting an emergency investigation into Miss Reeves's client trust accounts and immediate protective measures for the 3 victims I've identified." Judge Harrison looked at Vanessa like she was something he'd scraped off his shoe. "Miss Reeves, you have the right to remain silent. I strongly suggest you exercise it. Bailiff, please contact the King County Prosecutor's Office. I want someone from their fraud division here immediately." He turned to Marcus. "Mr. Chen, you're not currently charged with any crime, but I'd advise you to obtain independent legal counsel. The attorney representing you and your wife has an obvious conflict of interest." Marcus sat frozen. He looked at me finally, really looked at me, and I saw the moment he understood what he'd done. Not just the legal implications, but the moral weight of it. He'd tried to have his own mother declared incompetent not because she was, but because his wife needed money to cover her crimes. "Mom," he whispered. "I didn't," I thought. "You thought I was weak," I said quietly. "You thought I was confused and forgettable. You thought I'd become invisible." I pulled out one more document and handed it to Frank. "Your Honor, regardless of the criminal proceedings, I'm filing for a permanent restraining order against both Marcus Chen and Vanessa Reeves. Additionally, I'm petitioning for emergency custody of my granddaughter, Emily Chen, age 15. Emily stood up in the gallery. "I want to live with my grandmother." Judge Harrison looked at her. "Does your father have any objection?" Marcus opened his mouth, but nothing came out. What could he say? He'd just been exposed trying to steal from his own mother to cover his wife's felonies. His legal standing as a parent was about as stable as a house of cards in a hurricane. "Custody is granted temporarily, pending a full hearing," Judge Harrison said. "Miss Chen, Emily will be released to your care today. Mr. Chen, you're to have no contact with either your mother or your daughter until further court order." The bailiff escorted Vanessa out. She didn't look at anyone. Marcus sat at the defendant's table, staring at his hands. I gathered my papers and walked toward the gallery where Emily waited. I was almost there when I heard Marcus speak. "Mom." I stopped but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize." Now I turned, looked at my son, my only child, the baby I'd loved more than anything. "You didn't realize I was a person?" I said quietly. "You didn't realize that being old doesn't mean being stupid? Or did you just not realize I'd catch you?" "I thought you needed help," Vanessa said. "Vanessa said what you wanted to hear. She gave you permission to do what was convenient for both of you. Don't hide behind her, Marcus. You made your choices. Can we fix this? Can I make this right?" I thought about that. About 30 years of reading people, understanding what drove them, what could redeem them, what was too broken to repair. "I don't know," I said honestly. "You tried to erase me, to make me legally invisible so you could take what I'd built with your father. You hung up on me when I thought I was dying. You used my grief over your father's death as a weapon against me." Emily came to stand beside me. She didn't look at her father. "But I'm not going to press charges against you," I continued. "Vanessa, yes, she committed crimes. You made choices that were wrong, but you didn't break the law. Not technically, you just broke my heart." Marcus's face crumpled. "Mom, if you want a relationship with me or with your daughter, you're going to have to earn it. And that starts with taking full responsibility for what you did. Not what Vanessa made you do, or what you thought was best, or any other excuse. What you actually did." I took Emily's hand. "I'm going to take my granddaughter home now. When you're ready to be honest with yourself and with us, you know where to find me." We walked out of that courtroom together, Emily and I. Behind us, I heard Marcus crying. I didn't look back. The next 3 weeks were a blur of legal proceedings. Vanessa was arrested and charged with embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. The evidence I'd gathered led prosecutors to discover she'd stolen from 7 clients, not just 3. Total amount, over $2.1 million. Her law firm fired her immediately and cooperated fully with the investigation. They'd had suspicions, apparently, but no proof. My case file gave them everything they needed. Marcus filed for divorce. He lost his job. The tech company decided they didn't want the publicity of employing someone who'd tried to have his mother declared incompetent. He moved into a studio apartment in Beacon Hill and started seeing a therapist. Emily moved into my house. We cleared out James's office and turned it into her room. She painted the walls purple and hung string lights and put up posters of bands I'd never heard of. It was perfect. She asked me questions sometimes, late at night when we were both awake reading in the living room. "How did you know?" she asked one evening. "About Vanessa, I mean. When did you figure it out?" "The first time I met her," I said. "Not that she was embezzling specifically, but I knew she was running some kind of con. She had the tells." "Tells? Everyone has them. Little behavioral patterns that reveal when they're lying or hiding something. Vanessa touched her necklace whenever she was about to lie. She'd also subtly mirror whoever she was trying to manipulate, adopt their speech patterns, their posture, classic con artist behavior. And Dad? That was harder. Your father isn't a bad person, Emily. He's a weak person. There's a difference. Bad people hurt others because they want to. Weak people hurt others because they're afraid of loss, of failure, of being uncomfortable. Your father was afraid of not having enough money, of disappointing his wife, of facing hard truths. So he took the easy route. Is that forgivable? I don't know yet. But I know it's understandable. That doesn't make it okay, but it makes it human. She was quiet for a while. Then, Grandma, why did you let them think you were confused? Wasn't that scary? Terrifying, I admitted. Because what if I'd been wrong? What if I really was losing my mind and I just didn't realize it? That's the cruel thing about dementia. You can't always trust your own judgment about whether you have it. But you weren't wrong. No, but I had to risk everything to prove that. My reputation, my independence, my sense of self. I had to become what they accused me of being. That's not something you do lightly. Was it worth it? I looked at her, this bright, fierce girl who reminded me so much of myself at that age. Who was safe now, who wouldn't grow up learning that manipulation and greed were acceptable. Yes, I said. It was worth it. Vanessa's trial happened 4 months later. I testified for 3 hours, walking the jury through exactly how I'd built my case. The prosecutor called me the most prepared witness in Washington state legal history. Vanessa got 7 years in federal prison. Marcus came to my house 6 months after the competency hearing. Emily was at school. I invited him in but didn't offer coffee. I've been in therapy, he said. 3 times a week. Working on everything. Good. I wrote you letters, 12 of them. I never sent them because I didn't think I'd gotten the words right yet. But I think maybe I'll never get them perfectly right, so I should just say it. He took a breath. I was jealous of you. My whole life. You were this incredible person with this important career and I was just me. Tech guy, nothing special. When Dad got sick and you retired to take care of him, part of me was relieved. Finally, you were just a regular person, just my mom. Go on, I said quietly. Then when Dad died, you were just so strong, even in grief. And I realized I'd never be like you. I'd never have that strength or that clarity or that purpose. I was 42 years old and I'd never done anything that mattered. He wiped his eyes. Vanessa made me feel important. She needed me. She told me I was smart and capable and she couldn't do things without me. And when she needed money, I saw a way to be the hero. To solve her problems. To be the strong one for once. By making me the weak one, I said. By making you the weak one, he agreed. I told myself it was for your own good. That you'd be happier with less responsibility. That you were declining anyway. I told myself a lot of lies. Why are you telling me this now? Because my therapist says I need to take responsibility without expecting forgiveness. That the work is the work, regardless of the outcome. So I'm not asking you to forgive me, Mom. I'm just telling you I understand what I did. I understand that I tried to erase you because it was easier than admitting I felt erased by you my whole life. I sat with that. I wasn't a good mother, I said finally. I was a good agent. I was a good wife to your father. But I missed too many of your school events, too many birthdays, too many moments. I chose my work over you more times than I want to count. Yeah, he said. You did. That doesn't excuse what you did. No, it doesn't. We sat in silence for a while. Emily misses you, I said finally. She won't admit it, but she does. She's angry at you, but she loves you. She's 15. She needs her father. Does she want to see me? I don't know. But I think you should ask her yourself. Write her a letter, a real one. Tell her the truth. Let her decide. Marcus nodded. Can I tell you something about Dad? Yes. At the end, when he didn't remember anyone else, he still remembered you. Not your name, but he knew you were important. He'd see you and his whole face would light up. Like he couldn't remember the details, but his heart remembered. I was jealous of that too. That even without his mind, he loved you that much. My eyes burned. He loved you too. He was so proud of you. I know. I wish I'd been worth it. You still can be, I said. It's not too late to become someone your father would be proud of. Someone I can be proud of. Someone Emily can be proud of. I'd like that. I don't know how, but I'd like that. I stood up. Start with the truth. Always the truth. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. He left after that. I watched him walk down my front path, shoulders hunched, hands in his pockets. He looked small, lost, but also, maybe, like someone who was starting to find his way. Emily came home from school an hour later. Was that Dad's car I saw leaving? Yes. What did he want? To apologize. To try to explain. To start making amends. Do you believe him? I believe he wants to change. Whether he actually will, that takes time. Actions, not words. Did you forgive him? Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm leaving the door open for the possibility. She thought about that. He sent me a letter. I haven't opened it. You don't have to. But maybe I will. Eventually. That's your choice, sweetheart. There's no rush. That night, I went through old photo albums. Found pictures of Marcus as a baby, as a toddler, as a little boy. In every photo where I was present, I was in FBI gear or business attire. Always working. Always somewhere else, even when I was physically there. I'd caught serial killers and crime bosses. I'd put away some of the worst people in the country. But I'd failed to see my own son becoming someone who needed catching. Maybe that was the real lesson. That you could be brilliant at reading strangers and blind to the people closest to you. That professional success didn't equal personal success. That titles like the ghost and decorated agent didn't make you a better mother. I thought about James, about how he'd supported my career even when it meant sacrificing time with me, how he'd never made me choose between my work and my family because he knew how much the work mattered to me, how he'd loved me anyway, even when I came home late or missed dinner or spent weekends reviewing case files. I hope I did right by you, I whispered to his photo. I hope you'd be proud of how I handled this. Emily appeared in the doorway. Grandma, are you okay? Just thinking about your grandfather. I wish I'd known him better. Before the Alzheimer's. He was remarkable, patient, kind, strong in ways I never was. He would have known how to handle Marcus better than I did. You handled it fine. You stopped them. You protected yourself and me. That's what mattered. I could have stopped it earlier. Before it got to court. If I'd been more present in Marcus's life, maybe none of this would have happened. Emily sat down next to me. Or maybe it still would have, and you'd be blaming yourself for different reasons. You can't fix people who don't want to be fixed, Grandma. You taught me that. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You know what I think? I think you did exactly what you needed to do. You protected yourself, and you gave Dad a chance to face what he'd done. That's more than most people would do. We sat there together, looking at old photos. Outside, Seattle rain started falling, gentle and persistent. The house creaked and settled around us. Somewhere in the city, Marcus was probably sitting in his small apartment, trying to figure out how to be better. Vanessa was in prison, facing the consequences of her choices. And I was here, in the house James had restored with his own hands, with my granddaughter beside me, still standing, still strong. Still Margaret Chen, not just the ghost, not just the confused old woman they tried to make me, but something more complex, human, flawed, trying. The doorbell rang. Emily went to answer it and came back with a package. It's from your old FBI office. I opened it. Inside was a plaque. In recognition of Margaret the ghost, Chen's continued dedication to justice. Some agents retire. Others just change jurisdictions. Underneath was a note from my former boss. Heard about your case. Nicest retirement present. You could have given us reminding everyone not to mess with FBI agents, even the retired ones. Coffee soon? We could use your expertise on a cold case. Emily read over my shoulder. Are you going to do it? Maybe, I said. Just consulting. From home. If it doesn't interfere with being your grandmother. I think you should. You're too good at it not to. What about you? What do you want to be when you grow up? She grinned. I'm thinking lawyer. Someone has to keep you out of trouble. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. Your grandfather would have loved that. Yeah, she said softly. I think he would have. Later that night, after Emily had gone to bed, I sat in James's favorite chair and thought about everything that had happened. About 30 years of chasing criminals. About losing James to Alzheimer's, about almost losing everything to my son's weakness and his wife's greed. But I'd survived. More than that, I'd won. Not because I was smarter or stronger or more righteous, but because I'd remembered something essential. I was Margaret Chen. I'd spent 3 decades outsmarting criminals who thought they were untouchable. I wasn't about to be taken down by a third-rate embezzler and my own son's midlife crisis. Some people think getting old means becoming invisible. They think it means losing your edge, your relevance, your power. They see gray hair and wrinkles and assume weakness. They forget that age is experience. That the quiet old woman in the corner might be someone who's seen things, done things, survived things that would break younger people. That silence isn't confusion, it's observation. That stillness isn't frailty, it's patience. They forget that the most dangerous opponents are the ones who've already won 1,000 battles you'll never know about. My son forgot that. His wife never learned it. They looked at me and saw an easy mark, a confused widow, a woman past her prime. They forgot I was the ghost. And by the time they remembered, it was far too late.